This is the Philly Fan Podcast with your host, Kevin Flannery.
Welcome back to another edition of the Philly Fan Podcast. I'm Kevin Flannery, your host, along with my partner for today and hopefully future episodes, Caleb Cleveland.
Hi.
So, this episode is a special episode where we are going to do a Phillies Perfect Off-Season podcast. And I prepared for this. I have like 9 pages of notes for this one. First off, I'm going to start with giving you some players on the current Phillies, starting with some of the pitchers, just to kind of see where we're at. So, Caleb, you want to read Nola's stats for me?
He has an ERA of 3.25, 205 innings pitched, 29 BB, and 235 strikeouts.
A BB is a walk for anyone that doesn't know, and I know I have a bunch of people watching / listening to the podcast that do not know certain baseball stats. So the reason I wanted to read off Nola first is because I think he's one of the biggest key parts of this Phillies upcoming season. If Wheeler pitches well, we know Wheeler's going to pitch well. We know he's going to eat up innings. If Nola pitches well, you've got the 1 and you've got the 2 really good together, followed by a Ranger Suarez. That's a great 3, but you need a 4. And in my offseason, I've got them signing a 4. They have money. They have $55 million to spend. I made sure they spent all $55 million. Theory, in real life, Dombrowski will probably go over that second luxury tax threshold, which is $55 million above what they're at right now. Let me read you off the roster that's currently on the team. You've got Wheeler as your number 1, Aaron Nola, your number 2 pitcher, Ranger Suarez, your number 3, Bailey Falter / Andrew Painter somewhere in the 4 and 5. Your bullpen currently is Andrew Bellotti. Then you got Jose Alvarado, Sir Anthony Dominguez. He was great. If it wasn't for Alvarado and Dominguez, we don't make it as far as we did in the playoffs. Dominguez was, once we saw Dominguez come out, and I think he struck out Paul Goldschmidt, Arenado, and then Yepez all in a row in the 8th inning of that Cardinals game, and we're like, okay, Dominguez is back, because before that, he was really very wild. So, you have Dominguez, you got Brogdon, for some reason you have Nick Nelson and Sam Coonrod still. I would not mind just throwing them on the release area, DFAing them, and just saying no more. Then your position players are Hoskins at first, Bryson Stott at second, question mark at shortstop, Alec Boehm's at third, Schwarber's in left, Marsh is in center, Castellanos in right, Realmuto catching, Harper the DH when he comes back after the All-Star break. I guess from there, we're going to get into the perfect offseason. Here we go. My perfect offseason. $55 million to spend. The number 1 shortstop on free agency is Trey Turner, batting .298, 21 home runs, and he's 29 years old. Very wanting. He's going to bring in a $300 million contract. If you do $300 million divided by say 7 years, we'll see how much money that will make him.
That would be about $42 million.
Like $42 million a year, and we only have the $55 million to spend. In 1 year, that's actually just saying, okay, I don't care about luxury tax. I'm just going to give the draft picks that's needed, go over the luxury tax. So I decided to go the other route, and I took Xander Bogaerts. He's 30 years old, batted .307 for the Red Sox, and he has 15 home runs. You're getting a guy who bats .307 in the top of your lineup and plays solid defense. That's almost all you can ask for from a shortstop. Better defense is what Turner brings you, but Turner brings you more money. Dombrowski also has a connection with Bogaerts. He signed Bogaerts in the Red Sox organization when he was there, so that could be some kind of connection thing. But I found this was pretty interesting. He led the major leagues in BABIP.
What's that?
It means batted average of balls in play. That is a much needed silence. I'm keeping that. It's, I guess, important because he batted .362 in that and led the major league. So I guess that's important.
I guess leading the major league in anything is good.
That's why it comes up, even if it has to be BABIP. He also is coming off one of his best defensive seasons since he was 22. He's 30 years old now, so he hasn't had a great defensive season until this year. And he's a consistent hitter with a career .292 average. To put that in comparison, what was Kyle Schwarber's batting average?
Schwarber had a 218 batting average.
Schwarber had a 218 batting average, and Castellanos had a
263.
Yeah, the two players that we spent a bunch of money on last offseason are not even batting close to 307. Schwarber never even got close there. Schwarber never even got over 220 because Schwarber hits the home runs. Castellanos was supposed to hit for average, but he didn't do too well the whole year. I'm just going to leave it at that.
No one on the Phillies is batting that high.
Is anyone batting even close to 300?
I think the closest is Marsh at 288.
and he only played for the Phillies for half the season.
Yes.
So that's bringing in such a better hitter. If you're batting .307, you're bringing in contact and pretty much everything in that area. My second signing, I'm gonna bring in Chris Bassett. Not one of the top names. Top names for pitchers are really Carlos Rodon, Andrew Heaney, DeGrom, Verlander. All those are players that if we want to spend a lot of money, we can spend a lot of money for. But I'm bringing in Chris Bassett on a 3-year, $51 million deal. It's only $17 million a year. He's 33 years old. He had a 3.42 ERA and 181 innings pitched. It was the most strikeouts he's ever had. It was the most innings pitched he ever had. It was one of his better ERA. He also has performed now well in a New York market. He was great. He was a great pitcher in Oakland. But Oakland's Oakland. Oakland's not as big of a market as Philadelphia or New York. And he performed there. So I see him getting a big contract somewhere. The only issue is he walks a lot of guys. And I think I would get pretty annoyed at that pretty quickly. And I don't need another Kyle Gibson. Kyle Gibson was just straight up pain. After he had his no-hitter start, straight up pain. Honorable mention this far into the broadcast, Zach Eflin was signed to the Tampa Bay Rays last night on a 3-year, $40 million contract. Eflin was a former Philly, and he got a good contract. I'm happy for him. I didn't notice he hit a home run when he was a Philly. He hit I think it was like 410 feet into the bullpens. My friend sent me that earlier today, where I would not have known. So wanted to mention happy trails to Zach Eflin and have a great career somewhere else. So my third thing is I'm trading Eric Miller and another prospect for Kendall Graveman. No one knows who Kendall Graveman is. Kendall Graveman's a guy who was signed on the White Sox last offseason on a 3-year deal. I'm taking the next 2 years of his deal. He was in 65 of the 162 games with a 3.18 ERA. That's pretty darn good, especially with the DH in the league. No ERAs are really under 2.50 anymore. That's like an outstanding ERA. So I say that's pretty good. He's a good middle to back end of the pack, and he only has $16 million left on the contract. Fourth and fifth signings. My fourth signing and my fifth signing, you can either sign them both or sign one or the other. My fourth signing, I'm signing an outfielder, Cole Calhoun, to a 1-year, $3 million contract. He's a good defender, has some good pop, good bench bat. We're going to need some kind of outfielder to play when Harper's not there till the All-Star break. He's 35 years old. He only batted .196 last year with 12 home runs. He was not a starter, but he was on the Rangers. The other option I could bring in the outfield is Tommy Pham, who started for a good amount of the year with the Padres, hit 17 homers, and he batted .236. So I could bring in either of them. Pham is going to probably require a little bit more money than Calhoun, but I think they will bring in a bench bat at some point.
Who would you prefer to bring in?
I think I would prefer Cole Calhoun. I just think he just has some kind of thing. Like, we like Brad Miller a lot because Brad Miller hit a lot of home runs, a lot of pop in his bat. This kid, he has pop in his bat, and I think everyone in Philly would really like him. The fifth guy I'm signing is Will Smith. You might recognize Will Smith. He's not the actor, and he's not the catcher from the Dodgers. I think there's like 3 or 4 Will Smiths in sports. But he's a pitcher. He pitched on the Astros in the World Series team that we lost to, and I will refuse to watch the World Series trophy ceremony every time it comes on. I don't want to see it. I really don't want to see it. So he had a 3.97 ERA. He's a bullpen innings eater, veteran with a lot of playoff experience. He won the World Series with the Braves. He won the World Series with the Astros back-to-back years. I would actually see him as higher than getting Kendall Graveman. I really think he would be a great presence to a winning organization now. All the players I'm signing is shortstop Xander Bogaerts to 6-year deal, Chris Bassett, starting pitcher, to a 3-year deal, trading for Kendall Graveman for 2 years, Cole Calhoun for 1 year, Will Smith for 1 year. You also have a lot of players in your minor league system like Andrew Painter, who had a 1.56 ERA in the minor leagues, which is dominant, 155 strikeouts. You had Mick Abel, who was pretty darn good. He won't be up yet. You have Griff McGarry. You have center fielders. You have shortstops. You have a lot of minor league talent if you want to make a big trade for some top guy. So, just so everyone's under the same impression here, Phillies will have a rotation then of Wheeler, Nola, Ranger, Bassett, Fulton to start the year, or Painter. A bullpen of Andrew Bellotti, Alvarado, Brogdon, Dominguez, Will Smith, Graveman, Coonrod, Nelson, maybe McGarry. from the minor leagues. Position players will be Hoskins, Stott, Bohm, Schwarber, Marsh, Castellanos, Realmuto, Harper, and the bench will be Edmundo, Sosa, Calhoun, Vierling, Maton, and Hall, which is not a bad thing. One more thing I want to touch on before we shut this down is the contracts for players. Nick Castellanos is getting paid $20 million. Harper's getting paid his $25 million each year. Wheeler's getting paid $23 million a year. And Scott Kingery is getting paid $4 million a year. Because Scott Kingery, I don't even want to touch on him. He's just a disaster. He's not that good, but we signed him to a big contract, and now he's taking $4 million every year. Also, something that you all might want to notice, players with arbitration money. Hoskins, Ranger, Alvarado, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Sosa are all going into arbitration, which means they'll get a bigger contract than they will want. So, any final questions?
Not for me.
Okay, so that is going to wrap up this edition of the Philly Fan Podcast. I'm Kevin Flannery, along with my co-host, sidekick, whatever you want to call it, Caleb Cleveland. This is Kevin, signing off.